Honourable Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I just wanted to take a call on this particular clause, which I haven't done so far, and I wanted to respond to the questions that my colleague Carol Beaumont asked me, and any other interjections that Mr Hyde or Mr Williamson might have. I'm happy to respond to those as well. The Carol Beaumont raised in clause with what will be the new clause 6A2 that this only currently says the advancement of science and technology education. When we look back to the historical roles of the Royal Society in science and technology education, I think it gives us a clue as to why there perhaps isn't the inclusion of humanities in that sub-clause, and that in fact relates to the Royal Society's role in helping to set the science curriculum, which is actually a role that it has traditionally played, and it is not one that would have been associated, I suspect, with the Council for Humanities, who have previously guided that particular area. The other area would be an historical and even more recent need and requirement for more science and technology teachers, and obviously that's an area where we've had a significant shortage as well. I can see that there are some colleagues, Dr Prasad for instance, who are passionate defender of the social sciences and the humanities, who perhaps is looking at this clause and wondering why the change has not been made to include the word humanities in it. I wasn't on the select committee myself, so I'm not aware that it was raised, but I do believe it relates to particularly the Royal Society's role in developing the science curriculum, which the Council for Humanities has not had. But I don't think Dr Prasad should be too upset about the sub-clause. I think that when we look at the overall functions that are now within this clause, it actually gives the humanities the role alongside science and technology, and I think the particular sub-clause notwithstanding, when we look at the total of this clause, we see humanities right up there beside science and technology. Mr Chair, the comments I wanted to make specifically on these functions is to note something, is that the bill doesn't just actually add the word humanities. What the bill does is it repeals the whole clause and then reinstates it. So this is an opportunity in this House to reflect on whether these are the functions that we believe the Royal Society should have. So while it is a conversation about the inclusion of humanities, we're not just doing that. We actually, as a House, are repealing a whole section of the Act and replacing it with a new section. So this is the opportunity to assess whether these are, in fact, the functions that the Royal Society should have. I want to focus on two of them. That is subclause B, which is around the encouragement, promotion and recognition of excellence in science, technology and the humanities. And I do believe this is one of the things that the Royal Society is now doing more and more. A quick look at the Royal Society's website would tell you that the range of awards and prizes and medals now given out by the Royal Society is vast. We have the Charles Fleming Medal for Environmental Science, the Cooper Medal for Physics and Engineering, the Crest Medal for Creative and Innovative Science, the Dame Joan Metch Medal for Social Science Research, and now a new award to be given out for the first time this year, the Humanities Aranui Award. And so the humanities, as we've noted previously in this debate, are already functioning within the Royal Society. Our job here is simply to give the final legislative tick-off to that, but the actual work's ongoing. And so there is now a humanities award in there. But the award perhaps that people will know the most about is the Rutherford Medal. Well, I hope that members do, and if they don't, I'm happy to enlighten them. The Rutherford Medal is the medal that recognises the excellence in science. And when we look down the history of the people who've received the Rutherford Medal, it really is a tribute to the scientists of New Zealand. People that members of this House will be quite familiar with, the likes of Paul Callaghan, Alan McDiarmid, obviously, Peter Gluckman. Now, Peter Gluckman is now the Prime Minister's Science Advisor, and some years ago he won the Rutherford Medal. And to me, his latest publication is exactly the example of why the bringing together of the humanities and the science under this bill is so important. Peter Gluckman's topic, I guess, was adolescent morbidity. But when we actually talk about what adolescent morbidity is, it is in fact a combination of the physical health, the things that people will need to have to enable them, as Sir Peter says, to survive adolescence. But it is also about the whole way in which we support people to achieve their potential in whatever field they're interested in. And that does involve moving into areas like psychology. It also goes into areas of social development and social science. And so I think there are important areas, Mr Chair, just briefly, Mr Chair. So I think the Rutherford Medal is an important example of a high-quality excellence award. And someone like Sir Peter Gluckman is actually now showing us that the kind of work he's doing, which is taking on issues of physical science and bringing in social sciences and the humanities in a very, very important report that we do hope the government takes notice of. So I think that particular subclause B, is an important one. It's one that I think we now, as we are re-putting these down, as we're re-establishing these as the functions of the Royal Society, we should be very proud of. The other one I particularly want to highlight, and it has been mentioned by a couple of other colleagues, is the question of expert advice on important issues to the government and the community. And I think the Royal Society needs to be congratulated, because across New Zealand, branches of the Royal Society play that role in their communities of highlighting issues that are important for the public to be able to debate. And I do know that during the debate on genetic modification, when the Royal Commission was meeting, and then in the wake of the Royal Commission's report, we saw the Royal Society playing an important role. And I happen to know that the Select Committee, when it did its inquiry into matters surrounding the possible accidental release of genetically modified organisms into New Zealand, yes, it was indeed, quite some memory from Mr Hodgson, I know. It did take in the Royal Society's advice, and in fact one fascinating occasion was when two scientists assessed the information that was related to the so-called Corngate situation, and came up with quite different conclusions. And they were both fellows of the Royal Society. They were both brought in by the Select Committee, and to me that's the essence of the role that the Royal Society can play, of actually being able to say science is not this absolute thing, but we are going to be able to bring together the best minds in the country to advise, in this case, a Parliamentary Select Committee on what is an issue that, frankly, with due respect to the then members of the Local Government and Environment Committee, they probably weren't able to bring to the table themselves. So that kind of community and parliamentary advice role, I think, is very important, and I'm very pleased that we are restating that particular function tonight. I just want to mention a couple of other things. There is the Marie Curie Lecture Series. It's a year-long tour of talks by female New Zealand chemists in honour of Curie's Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So here's an example both in terms of supporting scientists but also acknowledging the role of women in science. And we're Moana Maki, I'm not allowed to mention the absence of members, but Moana Maki is someone who's contributed significantly to this debate, and I know that she is very keen on encouraging the role of women in science. It's often been seen as a male-dominated profession, and so that lecture series is a good example of the way in which the Royal Society fulfils that object with that function within this clause. So, Mr Chair, the point that I'm really trying to make here is that there are important roles within this section, and we shouldn't gloss over them too quickly, because they are the essence of why we have the Royal Society, and we as a House are being asked tonight whether or not we want to put those objects and those functions back into place. And we are making that judgment, and I think those objects and functions have served the Royal Society extremely well. They have been altered at times over the years, and earlier in this debate we talked about the different acts that have been put in place, and the most recent one being the 1997 Act, which brought the social sciences more to prominence within that legislation. So that's what these particular clauses do. I also note that there's the get out of jail function, which is the final one, to do all other lawful things that the Council considers conducive to the advancement and promotion in New Zealand of science, technology and the humanities. That's the clause. People who are familiar with the constitutions, and I don't know why, but student associations come to mind on this particular evening, and there's always one of these clauses in a number of incorporated societies where there is a clause that allows the organisation to perform things that are within its remit but perhaps haven't been considered within the exact language above. And I think, again, that could assure Dr Prasad that the humanities are not being left out of the particular subclause that we saw. So, Mr Chair, I just wanted to make those comments because I actually, having not spoken on this particular clause clause. This is one of the most significant clauses of the bill. It is the restatement of the very things that we expect the Royal Society to do, and I think it's important that we are taking some time to work through those. They are, in a sense, in an order of importance, from the overall role of fostering the culture of supporting science, technology and the humanities, all the way through to the sort of get out of jail function, and they are all important, and I'm very pleased that we're able to re-include them in our legislative framework.
Honourable Rodney.